There is one particular foreign policy issue which, in some ways, has been one of the most remarkable successes of the Modi government. And I'm talking about Afghanistan. The Taliban declaring to the rest of the world that they have agency of their own, that they are not Pakistani proxies. We grabbed the opportunity. The Taliban were, in any case, reaching out to us. They had expressed interest in building up relations with India. There are serious concerns that we might have regarding the Taliban. There were very serious security concerns, concerns related to terrorism. Maybe you can call it a gamble, but we decided we will open a technical mission. India has been doing in terms of providing food, in terms of providing medicines. The current Taliban regime is quite different from the one which was there in the 1990s. There has been a lot of talk about the foreign policy of the Modi government in the last 10 years or so. And there have been some significant achievements which the Modi government can rightly claim. For example, India's outreach to the Middle East, the way India has actually improved relations with the West, India's standing in the world, G20, what have you. But there is one particular foreign policy issue which, in some ways, has been one of the most remarkable successes of the Modi government. And I'm talking about Afghanistan. Now, the reason I say that this is a success story is that when in 2021 August, the Taliban captured Kabul and captured Afghanistan, there were a whole lot of the usual suspects in India who were talking about, who were painting these doom and gloom scenarios about how India has been worsted, how India has been ousted from Afghanistan, and the fact that we had to pull out our mission from Afghanistan and temporarily close it down actually seemed to suggest that these doom and gloom scenarios were actually correct. But then there was a remarkable turnaround in how things played out. And that became very clear within the first couple of weeks itself, when the first problem started between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And that was the Taliban declaring to the rest of the world that they have agency of their own, that they are not Pakistani proxies, that yes, they might have used Pakistan just as Pakistan used them when the Americans and the Europeans were present in Afghanistan. But once the Taliban were in Afghanistan and were in control of Afghanistan, they regained their own agency and they were no longer dependent on Pakistan, far less proxies of Pakistan. And I think over the last 2.5 odd years, there is adequate evidence that the Taliban might have broken the shackles of slavery of the United States, as was suggested by Imran Khan, but are now in the process of breaking the shackles of slavery to Pakistan and their dependence on Pakistan. So that is something which was a remarkable turnaround of events. And something which I think showed the kind of nimbleness of India's foreign policy, that we grabbed the opportunity. The Taliban were, in any case, reaching out to us. They had expressed interest in building up relations with India. A couple of senior Taliban leaders had suggested that India should come and finish the developmental projects, that they were very keen on building up their relationship with India, that India should not look at the Taliban or Afghanistan from the prism of Pakistan. And I think the Ministry of External Affairs grabbed that opportunity cautiously, but nevertheless, I think it was one of those efforts that were made to actually see how far we could go with a regime which had been demonized for many decades actually in India. And I think the policy framework that was developed was that the Taliban are a reality in Afghanistan, that we need to engage with them, but engagement is not endorsement. That yes, there are serious concerns that we might have regarding the Taliban. There were very serious security concerns related to terrorism, Afghanistan becoming a safe haven or sanctuary for Pakistan to plot against India, things which had happened in the 1990s. So those were very serious concerns. And then, of course, there were concerns about the human rights situation in Afghanistan, the treatment of women, minorities, what have you. We remember in the 1990s when the Taliban took over in Afghanistan, there were religious minorities who had to wear a kind of a mark to identify themselves as religious minorities. It brought back images of Nazi Germany where Jews had to wear a band of sorts and walk around. So there were those serious concerns, but I think the broad policy line was that if there is scope for engagement, we will engage, but we will not endorse. We will not break the international consensus. We will be part of the international consensus on Afghanistan, but we will not give our own agency insofar as crafting a foreign policy is concerned entirely to the international community. So while we'll march in tandem with the international community in terms of granting recognition and other taking other diplomatic steps with Afghanistan, we will nevertheless start engaging with the Taliban government. And that is why it was, maybe you can call it a gamble, but we decided we will open a technical mission in Kabul. One of the purposes for opening that technical mission was the other pillar of Indian policy towards Afghanistan. We've never been involved in any kind of warring in Afghanistan. We've never played favorites, one against the other in Afghanistan. We've always dealt with whoever was in power in Afghanistan, and we've done this so that we can engage with the people of Afghanistan. We can provide whatever assistance we can to the people in Afghanistan to make their lives better. So one of the primary purposes of the technical mission was to not only engage at a somewhat political diplomatic level with the Taliban, but also to use that mission to provide humanitarian assistance, and that India has been doing in terms of providing food, in terms of providing medicines. There are huge consignments of medicines which have gone. We are still giving scholarships to Afghan students. In fact, apparently 1,000 scholarships have been given, including a substantial number to women students. Although most of these scholarships have been tweaked in a way that these are online courses which have been designed for Afghan students because of certain complexities in visa processes and procedures. But other than that, I think there has been a steady scaling up of the diplomatic engagement with the Taliban government. Again, one very important aspect of this relationship has been that one of our primary concerns, which was related to security and terrorism, seems to have been addressed by the Taliban. When we speak to people in government in India, they claim that there is actually absolutely no evidence so far to suggest that that the Taliban are allowing their soil to be used against India. Unlike the past, when terrorist groups, Pakistani terrorist groups, used to go into Afghanistan and operate inside Afghanistan against India, were using Afghan soil for training camps and for a variety of other purposes. None of that has been allowed by the Taliban. So the Taliban are in command, in complete control and are ensuring that this kind of activity does not take place. So that has given a lot of confidence to the government in India to engage with the Taliban. Again, that does not mean that our reservations to Taliban policies, the kind of ideological orientation which they have, their policies towards women, is something that we endorse. Far from it. I think there will continuously be a kind of an engagement with the Taliban to moderate their stance. But there is a sense inside India or the Indian establishment that this might well be a transient phase, and as time passes, the Taliban are likely to moderate some of these policies, like they have moderated many of their policies on a range of other issues. So, for example, in some ways, the current Taliban regime is quite different from the one which was there in the 1990s. The current lot is more in tune with how the world operates. They've tried to address concerns of other neighbors as well, partly because they want to shake off the shackles of dependence that the Pakistanis have imposed on them, which is why they are looking for alternatives through Iran, even through Central Asia, but partly because they realize that until and unless they address some of these concerns of neighboring countries to the north in Central Asia, to the west in Iran, and countries like India, also countries from other parts of the world in Europe and the United States, on international jihadist organizations, until and unless they are able to do that, they will not be given the kind of diplomatic recognition that they crave for, that they require, that they need. So I think there has been a certain amount of pragmatism which has also come in the Taliban in their engagement with the rest of the world. At the same time, the deep ideological strand that ties together the Taliban remains pretty much in touch. There are also some kind of tussles which are taking place within the Taliban between those who believe that the Taliban need to be a little more open. They need to allow women education, maybe allow women to work to the extent it is possible within the Taliban framework, and others who are far more conservative orthodox, led by the Amir in Kandahar, or the Kandahari lot, which is, as it's called, which is lot more antediluvian, for want of a better word. So there is that tussle going on, but for now it seems the Amir will continue to call the shots. But we'll have to wait and see how long it takes for these people to moderate. So the important thing is, from an Indian point of view, that the engagement process is only likely to deepen as we move forward. For now, of course, with elections hanging over India, elections will be over by the end of May. A new government will be in office. So I would imagine that once the election process is over, a new government is in office, perhaps we will see a lot more happening on the Afghanistan front. There is some talk of India wanting to expand its diplomatic presence in Afghanistan, which means not just in Kabul, but perhaps reopen some of our consulates. We haven't closed them down, but they are not staffed anymore. But maybe some of our consulates could open up inside Afghanistan. That is one possible thing which is being considered. Of course, the Afghans are very keen on India, reviving some of the medical and other facilities that were given to Afghans. Maybe that can be considered, which means that we will have to liberalize and open up the visas for Afghans, for which you will require a greater presence in Kabul and other parts of Afghanistan. Already there are direct flights, although the flights are only once a week, but there are direct flights between Delhi and Kabul. The frequency of that could increase as the traffic increases. So that is one area in which things are likely to move forward. The other area in which things are likely to move forward is that the Afghans are very keen on diversifying their foreign trade, in the sense that they are still very dependent on the Pakistani route for their imports and exports. Now there are reports coming out that the Afghans are very keenly looking at using the Chabahar port in Iran, and perhaps that offers yet another opportunity to India to make further investments on the Chabahar port, make it more operational than what it is right now, and develop the necessary routes so that this can become the major trading route into Afghanistan. So that could be another prong of our engagement with the Afghans. Yet another aspect on which I think a lot of focus needs to be paid in how do we revive some of the developmental projects which we were already carrying out in Afghanistan. Now, it's a known fact that India's developmental projects in Afghanistan produce the maximum bang for the buck. In the sense that these were designed around local communities, they engaged with local communities, they addressed the issues of local communities and were extremely popular. So and the Taliban themselves are very keen. They've seen the results of India's developmental projects, and they are very keen that these be taken forward. But alongside it, there is, I think, growing scope for India also engaging in Afghanistan on developing some of the mega projects. These are still on the kind of on a drawing board right now. But for example, the Taliban government seems to be very keen on building a huge hydropower project on the Kunar River. And India had in the past expressed interest when the Islamic Republic was there. But perhaps we could take up this particular issue and participate, help, assist, provide technical assistance, whatever, as far as the dam on the Kunar River is concerned. So I think that is another big mega project. Already the Salma Dam project in the western part of Afghanistan, India has been inspecting it, and a lot of work has gone on out there as well, and that could be taken to the next stage. So there are a number of areas in which the Taliban are very keen to engage with India. But I think it's also important for people in India to kind of, the government seems to have recognized it, but I think it's important for people in India to also try and take a somewhat more pragmatic approach towards the Taliban. There has been, and that does not mean that we do not continue to have reservations of how the Taliban treat women, their approach towards minorities. But we also have to recognize that there are other countries with similar problems. Pakistan, for example, look at the way the Pakistanis treat minorities, especially Hindus and Christians and Sikhs. It's terrible. In fact, compare Afghanistan to Pakistan and the Afghans. Not that there are many minorities left in Afghanistan, but the Taliban have not treated religious minorities as badly as the Pakistanis have treated religious minorities. So I think if many of the people feel no shame, no compunction in doing puppies and jappies with the Pakistanis, despite the treatment that is meted out to the religious minorities in Pakistan, I don't see why we should have problems in dealing with the Taliban, who, yes, we can have a big issue with their interpretation of Islam, their version of Islam. But at the same time, when it comes to treatment of minorities, I think they probably come out smelling much better than the Pakistanis do. So I think we need to start re-looking at our engagement with the Taliban in that light, and perhaps start opening up a little bit more than what we have done so far. And see how far we can take this relationship. Of course, security will remain a very important issue. That is something that at least people in India will always have a hawk-eye out for, to see that no untoward incident or activity takes place against Indian interests inside Afghanistan. The Taliban are mindful of it. So I think this is something which is where there is a lot of potential. But again, the most important thing from a geostrategic point of view is how fast the situation has changed in Afghanistan, and how Indian policy in Afghanistan has been a resounding success in many ways compared to the kind of doomsday scenarios that were painted earlier. And as I have always said, remember, there is never an end game in Afghanistan. Every end game in Afghanistan is the beginning of a new great game. And I think that new great game in Afghanistan has already started, and India is very much a player. We are no longer sitting on the sidelines.